You've done such a good job talking about how the matrix is collapsing. The work that you've put into your documentary, Best Kept Secret, really lays out how the government is not working in favor of the people. They are not making decisions in our best interest. And when you do the research, it's plain to see that there's this agenda for the government and certain entities to have nothing but power and control. And we're talking about this now. The catch, though, is that this has been going on for decades. What might be new to somebody today is something that's been going on for years and years that have added up to decades of deceit, is what it boils down to. It's just been made more obvious by this mass awakening that people keep referring to what's actually happening in the world the last few years by the global pandemic, whatever, however you pandemic, however you want to call it. But this word matrix is thrown out a lot, and we're going to get into the collapse that's happening. It's very promising from our stance, because this matrix keeps a lot of the stigmas that we talk about stuck in place, leaving a lot of unnecessary suffering for people, and that's changing, which is, it's a feel good. It's an eye-opening, feel-good experience that's leading a lot of people to look inward and understand and know and trust themselves at this point. But before I go any further, Sean Stone, let's talk about how cool you are. Okay. American actor, filmmaker, TV host. You've been in movies JFK, Wall Street, The Doors, Natural Born Killers, hosted Buzzsaw, produced your own documentary, Best Kept Secret. And the reason you and I are talking is because you've also been labeled conspiracy theorist. And that's a title that's created a stigma of its own, because it kind of puts us in a reality different from most people. And a lot of people nod when they hear the word matrix, but they still have a lot of confusion there. I've noticed that they'll nod in agreement, they'll nod like they know what we're talking about, but we throw the word conspiracy theorist and matrix out, and there's still a lot of confusion associated with it. So I'd like for you, since this is an area of expertise for you, to kind of dissect that, and also the label conspiracy theorist, so that we're all on the same page as we've come to this fork in the road. Either you know what's going on or you don't, but you have to really have an idea of what this matrix. We can talk all day long how it's collapsing, but if you don't really have a good grasp on what the matrix is, you're going to get lost somewhere along the way. So my cool friend Sean.
Yeah. It's a good question. Like, how do you describe the Matrix? I think the film described it best. It's like the reality that you see around you with your eyes, the normal operating system that we believe we've been born into, right? You could say that the Matrix has multiple layers to its structuring, but fundamentally, it's the major structures of of a system of government, right? Beginning with, like, you're lodged with a birth certificate, which creates uh, essentially it's like a puts you into a certain bondage with the state, and and then you get your social security identifier, even down to, like, your name. Your name is a title, it's a trust, it's not you. So everything that, like, in the physical realm of how we are, let's say, like, controlled, but we're told, we're free, but fundamentally we recognize that, like, there is no freedom here. It's like, you gotta, you think you own your home, but you have to pay property tax. Right? You still tax for that. So obviously it's not yours out free and clear, and you own the land. You're renting it. You think that you're free, but it's like, you got to have a license. You have to get a license if you want to drive. Technically you're supposed to be free to travel, but we have all these, these assumptions basically that we have to have a license to drive. We have to have insurance. Um, the same with like the medical system, right? It's like oh, you have to be insured, and then you have to go through a matrix of the medical system, which is basically the doctor telling you what's wrong with you and giving you some diagnosis, and all these different structures, the legal system, right? How everything in our American reality is like codified with mandates and codes, right? And commercial codes and laws. It's just endless. So the matrix is like it's a modality of control mechanisms, mental, physical, right? You break the rules, you go to jail, right? um, and spiritual. So as spiritual beings, like, we are God's creation. We are these spirits that are in physical form. We are not the name that was assigned to us. We are not the photograph in the driver's license. We are not the title or the trust. I mean, all these different things that we've been like kind of conscripted into, you could say, or we've misconstrued our relationship to these things, that we are actually the sovereign entity and energy giving power to the structure. I mean, that's what I say. Like, the matrix basically is in contrast to like the Declaration of Independence, right? It's basically saying, reminding us that we are born by the grace of a creator with these inalienable or unalienable rights. That you are here basically to be free, to pursue your happiness, to enjoy your life, right? That's the truth of who we are.
Mhm.
Everything else are these like systems and societies that we've basically either allowed to take over and parasitically feed upon us. And that's also another aspect of the matrix, is like the structures are there to keep us fooled, to keep us enslaved, to keep us unconscious, right? To keep us just running in programs. And energetically, we're feeding the matrix. Look at money, for example. It's like, oh, we got to make that money to then pay all the the debts and the bills and the and everything in our reality, which is fine as an energy exchange, but it's not a fair exchange. The money is not yours. It's not like it's gold or silver, which is the only constitutional money. The money is actually a promissory note. It belongs to the Federal Reserve. It's it's a Federal Reserve note. It's a promissory note. And and then like you just look at the energy exchange, like this Federal Reserve is the only one that can print money, or essentially like the Treasury prints the money, but it's really a loan from the Fed, right? So
Mhm.
essentially you're concentrating the creation of money, and then they're lending it out, and then we're basically being hoodwinked every time we're signing contracts with banks, whether it's a an agreement or a promissory note, that they then can lodge as securities, and they can trade and they can profit from, right, from our signatures. And they create money. The banks have the right to create money. We don't have that same right.
Yeah.
It's like, if we tried to create money, that'd be counterfeiting. They can just do it. Oh yeah, we got your promissory note, we create money.
Mhm.
So again, my point is, like, the matrix is a system where it's a structure where we are basically controlled, hoodwinked, and denied the truth of our existence. So that's the journey of awakening. It happens both. It happens at multiple levels, right? It's like, and it's awakening of our physical body. We want to be in tune with eating, a healthier diet, more, organic food, which food was organic until they started doing manipulation of genetics decades ago, right? And they started, obviously spraying all these pesticides and herbicides, and they're all designed to kill, the pests. But also, guess what? If it's killing those pests, what do you think it's doing to the living, biome within you,
Mhm.
within your gut, right? What is it doing to all the living bacteria that's good to actually, that's helping break down these things? It's like, it's not, so, we have to challenge, like, okay, or food is meant to be organic, so we want to be eating organically. We want to be living a healthier lifestyle. We want to put our mind into a place of questioning everything, looking at like really what's going on. Are they doing this because they care about us, or is there another agenda at work? It's like, just simple things. You look at anything the government does, and you're just like, is this actually for our benefit, or is this more? Is it about control? Like, someone decided, for example, like when Obama's administration had this whole like, um, clunkers for cash, where they were buying like old cars back from people.
Mhm.
But then you realize, well, wait a minute, like, is it really just because they're like trying to get like gas guzzlers and off the road, or is it actually they're trying to shift us into like an electric, they don't want us driving gas, they want us in electric vehicles, and they want us in totally GPS electric controlled vehicles that fundamentally could be shut down like that from from abroad if you wanted to, whereas an old car you can't. It's, you still have the freedom basically of going wherever you want as long as you can put gas in it, right? Whereas these cars now, you could really, technically you could shut it down, right? If you were like a, police or a government agency, you could basically shut the
Mhm.
car down because it's all electric. So it's like that's where the critical thinking comes in, just to recognize like, yes, there's positive things that you could be said, like, government does, but then you can also look at like, what is the agenda when they push like an Obamacare, for example, and all this, the money that goes into that, like, are they actually helping you get better health care, or is it just making you pay more for your health insurance? At the end of the day, it's like all these different, these things you have to critically think, you have to question. So that's the mental side, and the spiritual side is to basically say, I am the living being, I am the sovereign of my existence, I am the one giving energy to my reality. Where do I want to put my energy? Who do I want to interface with? Who do I want to make agreements with? Where am I in contracts that are unconscionable, that I'm ignorant of the terms, that I no that do not serve me, for example, that I've basically not even, I have not consciously contracted, but I want to reclaim my sovereignty over my existence, right? I want to recognize what's feeding on my energy, what's taking me away from the truth of who I am and why I'm here. So those are like the three levels basically of the awakening from the matrix. But the matrix is just, it's all around.
Mhm. So I think a critical piece that you mentioned is when you have this awakening and you start to question and you go into this place of critical thinking, that separates you from a lot of people when you get to that point. And it's at that point I've noticed that a lot of people start that labeling of conspiracy theorist. As soon as you start critically thinking for yourself, or you are doing, oops, sorry, I got a wild puppy over here. So
Yeah.
as soon as you start that critical thinking piece, people get uncomfortable and don't know how to respond and don't know how to look outside of what they've been told or programmed to think and believe and do. And it seems like we get to this fork in the road where you have one of two ways to go. You take responsibility of your beliefs, not the ones that you've been told to believe. You do the research, you understand the situation, you get a grasp on your options, and you make your own decisions. The other way is to just continue to do as you're told, which is kind of comforting for a lot of people. To just stay there, no questions asked, follow along with no knowledge or input for the process. And I've seen this in natural health a lot. I've been laughed at, ridiculed. I've spent a lot of time in my practice explaining what I do and what I believe and the road that I'm taking, because it's outside of the conventional norm and people don't understand that. It's not, you grow up and you grow into adulthood with a certain way of living, but it's not, you're not living according to your values and your beliefs. You're living according to what you've been told, what your parents were told, what your grandparents were told. And until somebody in that line breaks the mold, you're the weirdo. You're you're the one, you know, it's
Yeah.
so stigmatized and people are realizing this, and that's where the collapse or the crumbling of that matrix, that the web, the entanglement of programmed beliefs and being misled or led down a certain way, whether it's via the pharmaceuticals, tech, media, whatever it is, you step outside of that and people start looking at you all side-eyed.
Yeah. Of course they do.
Mhm.
Because it's different. I mean, it's like I always look at life like 80% of humans are conformists by nature, right? They're not designed to like be leaders.
Yeah.
And so that's okay. They just need to be told what to do. If the system was more egalitarian, more holistic, um, more conscious, right? They
Mhm.
wouldn't have to necessarily like, critically think, but unfortunately, we are in a world that allows free will, which allows for the extremes of like greed and manipulation and deception, right, to exist.
Mhm.
So, in order to survive in this world, like we have to have impulses to, for survival, right, and towards critical thinking to do so. I think that there's been a sort of a conscious agenda to put people into more um, well, we know this. I mean, the schooling system, for example, like using like sort of these 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 Prussian models of like putting people into like to rote learning, and then in America especially, it's like people even in Europe make fun of the American style of like multiple choice questions and repetition without like essays or critical thinking skills. Um, we they did, the Rockefellers and others like really financed this kind of education going back over
Yeah.
100 years because they wanted better workers. Like that was the actual intention of the education system, was like, let's basically like produce a factory worker at the end of this, right? They're educated enough to like know how to to work on an assembly line, or to basically follow orders, to work in an office, to obey. And there's nothing wrong with doing those jobs, and there's many people that are blue collar that have a lot more common sense than the most educated. That's what I actually noticed and see the last few years. What we saw clearly was that the more educated someone was through the schooling system, right, going up the ladder through the college, maybe getting a PhD, maybe getting a JD, and these were the people that were most susceptible to the propaganda of the science, of following whatever the science told them, because at school they were never taught otherwise. They were never taught about Rockefeller medicine. They were just taught pharmaceuticals, and they weren't they
Mhm.
never saw it as a conspiracy. They were just like, this is what you do. You have an ailment, you take a medication. You're sick, you take the antibiotic or the antiviral. It's just like they never thought critically. They didn't have to get through the school system. So the school system is not helping people to think critically. Ironically, the people that are like the least educated were had the most survival impulse and the most critical
Mhm.
thinking skills, right?
Mhm. Right.
Than those that are like the most educated, because they're the most indoctrinated by a system that is not, a system is not designed to make you think critically. The system is not designed to really challenge you. The system is designed to make you fit in, right?
Mhm. So it keeps you dissociated, and the system with the virus in the last couple of years especially has created a spiritual warfare from what I can see, and it has really like taken the cloak off of the governmental mind control and manipulation, and don't trust self, don't go according to your own intuition or to what you feel is right for you. Do what we tell you is right for you, and don't question us, don't question authority, don't look at our agenda, just dissociate from that and do as we tell you to do. And then if you step outside of that on this red pill journey, then we have to leave you behind, or you just don't fit in anymore. And it's almost like people are kind of upset that there's this huge division, but when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, you can't have unity without division. So once the cover has been lifted and we can see what's going on, it gives people an opportunity to find other people who are like-minded that they can connect with on a deeper level and make life more meaningful. You can't, like you said, you go through the school system and like you're indoctrinated into what to think, not how to think. So you're kind of robotically going through your days with people who are doing the same thing. There's no meaning to that. There's no deep level of connection. But now, after people have been awakened to what's going on, some people have been awakened to what's going on, you can really reach out and connect with other people on a much more meaningful level. And That's how I see this whole matrix crumbling. I would have never found the people that I'm very close with now if it weren't for the exposure into the corruption of the systems, right?
Yeah, that was a great moment, for people like myself who have been um, doing work in the realm of like awakening people, critical thinking, conspiracy theory.
Mhm.
Going back to like your question about conspiracy theory, I never thought of conspiracy theorist as like a negative term or a pejorative term. I just, because when you understand that, first of all, like politics, government, there's like a famous quote from FDR. He's like, if it happens in politics, you can be sure that it was arranged that way, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like there's
Mhm.
so many quotes from like from presidents. Like I think Woodrow Wilson also talking about like a group of men that people don't realize. Walter Rathenau, who's a very famous came from actually a very powerful family in Germany. And he was talking about like basically a cabal of like 300 people that ran Europe, and he was assassinated in the 1920s, I believe. And you get like so many. Benjamin Disraeli, the world is ruled by people you don't expect. There's like a famous line of the world is ruled but run by people very different than you expect. The kind of line. Um, so there's just countless people that are inside to it that have reflected on it. And then I did my thesis research. I studied history at college, and I did my thesis research on the New World Order agenda, and how that came out of literally like British roundtable group meetings and sort of like these conferences of like the 1920s and 30s, and that's where the phrase New World Order I kept seeing it pop up,
Mhm.
and then I was just like, okay, so this has obviously been talked about, and even H.G. Wells, who was sort of an insider to a lot of the British aristocratic circles and stuff, he wrote a book about it. So you know it was like silly to me, to say like, oh, someone's a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, okay, everything's a theory, unless you
Right.
unless you unless you have unless you unless you have irrefutable factual evidence, right, of everything along the way. It's a theory. We
Mhm.
Government uses conspiracy all the time to prosecute people. That's what RICO is. It's conspiracy, right? You get busted on terrorism or drugs. Most of the time, it's conspiracy charges. Mafia, it was all conspiracy charges, right?
Mhm.
So this notion that like conspiracy theorist, government's conspiracy theorist. It's just if your conspiracy theory involves people that are very powerful or connected to government, oh, it's like, oh, you can't go there. It's like, why not? That would be the most likely place for a conspiracy to be born, is when you actually have the power to change the laws or to evade the laws, right? I mean, what does CIA do? CIA breaks the law all the time, you know?
Right.
It's just like that's so of course they're conspirators in the CIA. So it's just like it's so ridiculous to me that like conspiracy theorist is a bad charge. I'm like, what else are you gonna be? You're gonna say like things just happen? Just
Well, right.
just a bunch of
There's got to
accidents.
be some kind of
No one
label.
no one thinks about, no one plans anything, no one strategizes anything. Everything just kind of like, well, we just wander around like just like a bunch of monkeys, waiting for the next evolution. I mean, people are just funny when they, it's like, what else are you if you're not theorizing, how things are actually going down, then you're just kind of just obeying orders and following the rules.
So it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like when you start changing your life, people are so worried about labels. When you start changing your life and you open up your eyes on one topic, this is from my experience, you start to see what's going on so many other levels. It's like you go down one rabbit hole and now you're down this one and you're down that one, and you don't just see the corruption in the medical system.
Mm.
You don't just see the corruption in the political system. You don't just see it, in one certain topic. Once you start to see what's happening, you kind of see it everywhere. And then it just starts rolling. And there's a certain level of judgment that comes for living in your truth and trusting your own intuition, because it's not something we've ever been taught. One of the most important things that we should learn as a child is how to trust your own intuition and believe in yourself and love yourself and be able to actually step in your own truth and adapt your own psychology rather than consuming and abiding by the predetermined ways of living that we're given. So when you step into your own identity, that's hard for a lot of people. It's uncomfortable and it's hard.
Yes, that's right. Because they maybe they're not living their truth, right? They're not
Yeah.
true with who they are. Their energy is not clear. So they see you as like, it's like they see your smile and they get pissed off, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, how dare you smile? Life's meant to be hard. Why do you have it so easy?
Yeah.
Why are you living the truth that I don't get to live? It's just like it's all resentment. It's all victim mentality. At the end of the day, like we have to fight that. We have to fight the victim mentality in every one of us, because anyone has the right to feel, you know, life's not fair, life is hard, life is, is put them in a victim mentality, like into make them into a victim. Like we have to fight that within ourselves, everyone, and recognize, no, I'm co-creating this experience. I have chosen this experience. I have the power to change my reality. I have the power to change my circumstance. And if I don't have the power to change it right now, then let me work with what's available to me. Let me work with the resources that are available to me at this time.
And that's
And
the human right.
it will change over time. It will eventually change.
Yeah. And that's our right. That's our right as
Yeah.
humans to experience these emotions and not tuck them down and not just move forward because we were told to. We're losing so much of the human experience because we're setting emotions aside. And once you realize that that is your right and that is the healthiest way to live, that's where the breaking down starts to happen. That's where the collapse, that's where the stigmas are ended and people aren't judged as they were before.
We have to feel. We have to be willing to feel, because that's the energy. The energy is a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about like intuition. What children have is like their energy is very pure. This is why society is very like predatory when it comes to children, whether it's verbal abuse, right, psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It's just like it's so easy because they're they can't defend themselves, and B, like they have this purity that people that are more impure, the more extreme they want. Basically, they hate that purity, or they want to feed on it, right? And so, like we as conscious beings actually recognize, it's kind of like what Christ was saying, like be like a little children. You still have the child within you. You still have that energy within you. Tune into that energy, and that energy comes through as you sense into your feelings. And like, okay, well, like my feelings they are taking me, they're making me feel uncomfortable. That's fine. Like feel the discomfort, because it's going to take you back to maybe something that was unhealed, some trauma, some wound, right? Something that you never processed. And once you get through that, once you process it, it's going to, like, you're going to find new experiences allowed into your life. But we can't allow new experiences until we've processed what has already occurred, right? Until we've actually allowed ourselves to feel thoroughly into what has already happened. Until we've done that work to clear out that energy, then we can allow something new energetically into our world. And that's the same with the matrix. These old structures, like, they're still standing there because we haven't really like recognized what a bunch of chicanery this whole thing, what a fraud,
Mm-hmm.
what a farce this whole thing is. Wait, you have power over me? I mean, it was like during the pandemic we finally got the chance to see it. Oh, you have the power to tell me to put a mask on? Really? You have the power to tell me what to put in my body? Really? Wait a minute, if you think you have the power to do that, then obviously you've thought you've assumed all this power over the last decades and decades of our lives here, which are against our constitutional principles. No, the power actually is reserved for the people. Go back to your Ninth Amendment, your 10th Amendment. Just because it wasn't in the Bill of Rights doesn't mean it's not for the people. We fundamentally have the power. We need to take it back. And it starts with tuning in. This doesn't feel right. This feels invasive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all right, connect yourself. You have the answers. We don't need to overstudy and overthink to have intuitive knowledge.
And that's where our freedom comes in.
That's everything.
That's everything.
I have to jump in a second here. So
Yep, I know you got to go. So maybe we can continue on tuning inward, because
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that's like next step, and we haven't been taught that, and we don't know how to take a fall and to process that before you get back up and start moving. It's once you trip into reality, you getting up is one thing, but processing that fall and like embracing the process of that and the act of recovering from that before you get up and move is something we really need to spend some time on. And that would
Yeah.
be really helpful for a lot of people if we could do that.
All right. All right. Let's tune back in.
All right. Sounds
All
good.
right. All right, my dear. It's good to see you.
You too. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Have a good day.
You too. Take care, Stephanie.